we ready? I'm going to borrow a quotation made about Thomas Edison for Milton Erickson. And that is that Erickson really was a tiny bird with a very big song. Erickson died before I knew him. If I'm to be Ericksonian, he died before he knew me. But when I was first asked to make this presentation, I thought, how can I do that? And then I thought, well, I don't know anyone that directly knew Buddha or Christ or Muhammad, and yet the disciples managed to transmit to us their consciousness, their way of being in the world. And I've been lucky enough to study with Milton Erickson's disciples, Betty Alice Erickson, Stephen Gilligan, Robert Dilts, Sidney Rosen. So I realized that part of my journey, I had a lot to say about Erickson, about his way of consciousness. I'm not going to talk about Erickson and hypnosis. And I'm not going to talk about Erickson and the fact that he was the forerunner of positive psychology. But I am going to talk to you about Erickson and his strategies for communication, effective communication that you can teach, that you can learn, and that can help you to understand, help you to listen, help you to perceive, help you to create, help you to grow. A kind of communication that helps you to build from within and find resolutions, not solutions. Strategies that he developed that really mean engaged communication, profound learning, a direct dialogue with the unconscious mind, not the Freudian unconscious, you know, that demonic part that will eventually destroy you, but an unconscious mind that is multidimensional, that is nonlinear, that is structured, that is patterned, and that has one goal in mind, your evolution. This is the unconscious mind of Milton Erickson. You know, in the world of iPads and internet and mass media and Facebook, that's not communication. That's posturing. I put on Facebook what I want you to know of me and what I want to know of me. Now, we know that when I'm on Facebook and I see one of my friends, I start secreting oxytocins, and I'm bonding. That's not communication. I'm falling in love with my computer because that's the only thing there. And in fact, we have some pretty interesting evidence that indicates that you are bonding to your computer, not to another person. This world, I really feel that it's this deep, meaningful social engagement that really is going to help us to grow into our own human awareness, and that we are really part of the one. So engaged communication, profound learning, connection, compassion, rather important, empathy, and an integration, head, heart, body, and soul. All of this takes place through co-creation and rapport. And I know that I said to a friend of mine that when I start out with an Ericksonian communication, I never know where I'm going to end up because we're co-creating. But it always ends up in magic, and it ends up in magic because it's about the human essence. We actually meet, we actually talk, we actually listen, we actually, when using his strategies, learn how to, once again, hear each other. You know, what I really want to talk about is some of his principles, but I'm going to use metaphors because that's the language of the unconscious. One of the most important metaphors that I can talk about is that we're all in this world together. We're all in the same boat. There's a wonderful story about two men that were out at sea and the ship sank, and they were in the same boat. And they decided one would stand on one side and one would stand on the other, and they would balance this boat, and hopefully they would survive. And when one looked up, the other one, he was drilling a hole in the bottom of the boat. And the other one said, "What the hell are you doing?" And he said, "Don't worry about it. It's not a problem." He said, No. They're just the boat and the ocean. And what are you doing?" And he continued. He said, "What are you doing? Stop it." And the other one said, "What's your problem? It's on my side." This is a world without communication. Attitude is everything. That means that when I look at you, or you, I see you as perfectly imperfect. And you're fine and lovable just the way you are. And we can meet. We can help each other to grow, to evolve. There's more that we can be. But you're fine just the way you are, I am, we are. That's the rapport. That's the acceptance. We all know this one. "Oh, I've got a problem." But you know, when somebody says they've got a problem, and I'm an analyst, I know it's about their mother. But Erickson said, no, the problem is the problem, and in the problem is the solution. I got a telephone call from a secretary of a friend of mine who's a famous psychic. And she said, I have a problem. I have somebody here. Mary's out of town, and this young man wants to kill himself. I said, kill himself? She said, yes. I said, send him over. Well, he came over, and you know what? He really wanted to kill himself. So I was very curious. I said, why would you want to see a psychic before you killed yourself? Well, he said, I have to know what I'm going to come back at. You know, what will I be? Oh, well, I said, taking a book for myself. How old are you? Ah, do you have a girlfriend? Ah, good relationship. Ah, education. And after about 20 minutes, I said, I think you're going to come back as a frog or a toad. Oh, my God, he said, I can't be a toad. Oh, no. I hate toads. I asked him a few more questions. I said, I think it's a toad. Oh, no, he said, what can I do? I said, well, you know, my agenda is full, but I can arrange for you to see somebody this afternoon, and you can talk it through with them. So the problem is the problem, and the problem is the solution. He's well and alive today and avoided coming back as a toad. Now, also, we have complete and incomplete information. Whenever we're learning something, we're interrupted. And when we're interrupted, we don't usually go back to the same thing. So now my reference point is incomplete. I'm making decisions on 20, 30, 40% of the information. And if it's a little bit of information, I look kind of crazy. I'm not. I'm basing it on that incomplete information. But if I come into rapport with you, if we have a real exchange, I can, through metaphor and some other strategies, give you more options, and you can complete the information. I had an elderly gentleman in Mexico come to me, and he was palsied, and he was high up in the Mexican government, and he said, I come from a very poor village, and I'm very high up in the government, and most of my business is at lunch and at dinner, and lunch and dinner is here. And I'm so embarrassed, I have to leave my post. Well, I saw him for 2 or 3 weeks, and he shook less, but lunch and dinner was pretty much here. When he came in, he said, what shall we do? I said, well, it's very simple. I said, I want you to keep shaking, because that focuses people on you. And I noticed that your other hand doesn't shake at all. So we're simply going to learn to eat lunch with the other hand. He's still in business, shaking and eating. More complete information. But most important part of the metaphor or the communication is to be directly indirect. A number of months ago, a friend of mine came to me, and he said to me,
I really want to ask you a favor. I said, okay. He's a very famous composer. He has 8 Emmys from different movies. He said, I lost my wife. My daughter almost died. I lost all my money. And I thought, what the hell am I doing? He said, so I started traveling the world, and I went and see the Dalai Lama and different people, and I recorded their words of wisdom and some common people on the street. And then I put it to music that I compose, and then I put visuals, and I want to have a gathering at your house of 30 socialites, and I want you to host it. You'll tell a magnificent story, and I'll compose, and they'll see what I'm doing. And my ego said, sure. But the day of the event, I was terrified because I couldn't think of a thing, and I was so distraught. I said, look, I'm going to forget about it. There's a marketplace with food and plants a few blocks from my house. A tree had died on the terrace. I'm going to go buy that tree. And as I walked into the marketplace, right there was the tree that I wanted. And I looked at the price, and I could afford it. And I paid the man for it, and then I went to pick it up. And I couldn't. And I said to this very old black man, missing teeth and hunched over, I need my money back. And he said, no, I grow them, I sell them, I carry them. And he picked it up, and we started walking. Oh, I thought, we have nothing in common. He certainly isn't educated. He looked 200 years old. I still had my teeth when suddenly he put the tree down. And he said to me, children? I said, children? He said, yeah, children. I said, oh, yeah, I have an adopted son. He was a Mexican street kid. It's 10 years later, and he's graduating Johns Hopkins with his master's degree. He's fluent in Mandarin. He has a job in Shanghai. He said to me, how'd you do it? So I said, I wanted him. He said to me, no. I said, well, I loved him. It wasn't offensive, but he said to me, no. And then he poked me and he said, you believed in him. Well, the tears rolled down my cheeks, and thank God he picked up the tree. We continued to walk, but now you know more of who I am. I said to him, children? He said, what? I said, children. I said, oh, yeah. I have a wonderful daughter. She's 8. She's going to be a nurse. She's great. And he put down the tree. Now, you know what I said next. How'd you do it? He said, you know, when I was 8 years old, he said, look at me. I'm hunched over. I've had a hard life. My wife is the same way. But my wife and I read Peter Pan. And we knew we could fly. We really knew we could fly. But he said, over the years, I forgot to remember that I could fly. He said, so every night when we put our daughter to bed, we tell her a bedtime story, and my wife sits on one side and I sit on the other, and we remind our daughter, never, ever forget you can fly. Well, I said, thank you. I have my story. So I said to him, I have this event, and I told him the story of the story. And I said, can I tell your story? And he said, my story? And I said, yeah, because your story is my story, is everyone's story. I want to tell you a story. And he said to me, yeah, but you have to do 3 things. I said, okay. He said, next week you come back and tell me, did they like my story? I said, fine. He said, then the second thing is you remind everyone that hears the story, never, ever forget you can fly. I said, okay. And the third, he said, see these bumps? I'm beginning to grow wings, and they're going to have feathers soon. Thank God he picked up the tree. And I've kept my promise. I did tell him they loved his story. And every time I tell this story, I keep my promise. Never, ever, ever forget that you can fly. Thank you.